What's happening, everyone? So, have you ever found yourself in a position where you feel like you're just kind of stuck, feeling like maybe you just can't move forward in your life for whatever reasons, or maybe you're just feeling like you're just going in circles? Have you ever thought about the reason that is possibly because you can't get past the tendency or maybe the inability to either forgive others or forgive yourself? And that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to be diving deep, talking about learning the importance of forgiveness. What are some of the different phases as you work your way through that process of forgiveness, and why those things actually really, really matter as you go through life? So stick around. Let's get into it. Well, good morning, ladies. How are you today?
I'm
Good
doing well.
morning. Doing good.
Morning.
Welcome. So we're going to dive right into this because we got a lot to cover, and I think it's going to go for a while today because it's a fairly deep topic, but a very relevant topic, I think, because a lot of people maybe don't understand some of the levels of forgiveness and maybe why
Mhm.
we get stuck and can't make those transitions either from one phase to the next. And then, as we always know, to be able to truly forgive, put it down, let it go, and what that all looks like. So, Bridget, I'm going to go to you first. I brought this subject to the table, and you said absolutely something we need to talk about. How about you share why you feel it's important and what we want the takeaways to be from today's session?
For many reasons. My first stop was because the holidays are coming up. And when you go into the holidays, you think a lot about family, you think about a lot about closeness. From my personal experience, you also think about ways that family or friends have disappointed you in the past and how that's going to show up mentally in these holiday seasons. And
Mhm.
so I thought that it was necessary that we talk about forgiveness.
Absolutely, I agree. And then Tressena, we talked a little bit this week about various things, but
Mhm.
and I said I thought it would be a great opportunity for you to join us here and maybe share from your perspective, especially based on some of recent life's events and some of our past life's events, why forgiveness is really relevant for you as well.
Well, y'all, I really think forgiveness is important for one reason, for your own health and well being. I
Mhm.
know that may sound so cliche and so simple, but really it is. We have no control over what it is other people will do, but we do have control over how we are going to accept or not accept the role that we play and what the forgiveness process will look like. And for me, I just knew in order for me to show up as my authentic self, as my peaceful self, as my healthy self, I need to forgive. And people are going to make mistakes from the beginning of life to the end of life. And so I think it's one that we definitely have to talk about, just like, Bridget's, sentiments. Absolutely. It's a discussion we need to have for that reason, that for our best selves, we need to forgive.
Yeah, and that's so
Absolutely.
true. To get to a place, and I used a great word, and that's peace. And also understanding, we're going to get into, and I'll share this now, about some of the different phases associated with forgiveness and kind of what that looks like. And I'll share that across the top. So basically, there are four phases of forgiveness. So there's a discovery phase, there's a decision phase, there's a why phase, and then there's also a meaning phase. So we're going to put a little bit of information around each one of those, explain and express why each step is actually relevant, and how sometimes when you're working your way through that process, you might get to the decision or the why piece and never work your way all the way through it. So you
Mhm.
Hmm.
feel like you have forgiven or you've actually put it down and let it go. But until you actually complete the full process, many times you really have not. And I think that's another key that we want to continue to look at.
Yes.
One piece I want to add on top of that when you talk about forgiveness is don't get forgiveness confused with having to hear or either saying I'm sorry, because those two
Mhm.
things get mixed up, because people feel like until I hear someone say that they're sorry for X or Y or whatever
Mhm.
happened, I can't forgive them. And that's actually not the case at all, right? Forgiveness is really something that you do that's internal to you from that standpoint. Bridget, what do you want to share about that? And because I know there was some things we talked about regarding that.
Absolutely. So for me, there's a quote that I always use is forgiving others. You forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace.
Mm-hmm.
And we walk around without uncovering, without using those 4 steps, 5 steps, whatever it may be to forgive. We walk around without going through that process and saying we forgive them, but we haven't uncovered everything. And that's important that you go through that forgiveness process. And we think, well, if they said they're sorry, or if they never say they're sorry,
Mm-hmm.
then you still have to go through that forgiveness process as well.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I think that's a key component of it is to understand what those steps are, and which is what we're going to cover today, so that you can work your way through it. Because as I said earlier, many times we do get in there and we get stuck. And that's when we get in this circle of why can't I get past this? Why can't I move forward? And that's because from a process standpoint, we haven't gotten all the way through the steps that we need to. Another thing I want to share, I had some notes here. Basically says forgiveness is an emotional change that occurs within the person who's been wronged. And that's a key component, I think, for people to understand, because we are talking about at an emotional level. Right? So in the moment when something happens, obviously your emotions can be high because you feel hurt, and those kinds of things. And we tend to, at that moment in time, maybe react out of the heightened emotions that we have at that particular point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But then at some point, as you work your way through that, you come down to a level, not to say that you're still not upset, but your more logical, more rational thoughts come in.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is where we start to talk about starting in some ways that forgiveness process. So the first part of it, and I was laughing as I was reading some of my notes, because you get to that rational piece. So then does it become, because the emotional piece is when I'm going to go out and break all the windows out of their car because they really pissed me off. That's that emotional piece of it, right? And that's where you are. But then when you get to that rational stage, that's when you really have to make conscious choices that are better for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've gotten the emotion toned down a little bit. So now how rationally do I deal with this? Because then that's when you start either to do those calculated, premeditative things to keep pushing your agenda, or you actually step back and start to put yourself in a situation where you want to try to move forward for yourself from an understanding and forgiveness standpoint.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge key. I think a lot of us overlook that step. It's like, well, now since they did that, I'm going to take all the money out of the bank account, or I'm going to, it's very cold, very calculated, because now you're at that logical reasoning stage of it, but you're still using that emotion of anger that's behind it to do what you want to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, Bryan, getting to, that logical stage, the power in that is that's where you get to make the choice.
Mm-hmm.
And you've moved away from the emotion of it. And now you're thinking like, okay, what am I going to do? And as you use the word calculated, because the first thing that I put on here on my notes is, if the decision that you're going to make, if you're thinking logically and not out of your emotions, is what is it that I want out of this? Do you want to remain mad and angry? Or do you want to think about what is this going to look like long term? Because you can't change what happened. And so logically, the power is I get to choose.
Right.
And one of the things that I always say about forgiveness is it is not an emotion. It is absolutely a choice. And once a person makes the choice that I'm going to forgive, then the process moves along into the next steps of what is it that I'm going to do.
Correct.
So that moving from emotion to logic is so important. But when you get to that place, what are your calculated decisions going to be? They have to be in the right direction. Right. Otherwise, your emotions may not be in the play, but logically, you're still thinking like your emotions are feeling.
100.
And we're talking to, excuse me, Bryan, we're talking to the audience now. So I want to say realistically, that is a growth process as well. You have to grow to be there. There's no way that we could expect, everyone, or even myself at that time, to start, thinking about, okay, so where do I want to be in this place? Because of course, when someone hurts you, and it depends on what happened in the situation or how intense it was, you don't go straight into those conversations with yourself or anybody else. So it's really, and we have used this on so many of our podcasts, being self-aware and knowing your temperature and when you've hit that point where, okay, let me back and think about this. So it takes some self-awareness. Realistically, you have to grow to that point.
Yep.
Couldn't agree more. That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely is true. And that goes to what we were just talking about with the steps. So that's the first phase of it. That's the discovery piece. That's the self-awareness piece. That's starting to understand and just reconcile within you your own emotions. Are you hurt? Are you upset? Are you angry? Yes, yes, and yes. And accepting those things, not denying it, or trying to bury it or cover it up, because that's not going to help you work your way through the process. You've got to essentially own it for yourself. And again, as Tressena said a few minutes ago, we can't control what the other person has done or does in the first place. We really don't have any control over that. What we do control is how we respond to it as best we can, right? So that's the discovery piece of it. And then as we said, the next step in that is logically making that decision of, what do you do as you move forward. So in that decision phase, and that's what Tressena was also alluding to, that's that moment of, now what do I do? Do I start to make these calculated moves, or do I actually take a few breaths, take a few steps back, try to get away from it to a degree, and get a perspective on what is my way forward? What is the best thing to do for myself? Because it's done. You can't change what's happened, right? There's not a time machine or a do-over button that you can push to move back in that direction. So really, we do have to try to figure out what is going to be the best way forward from that point. And that's that decision phase.
Absolutely.
Yeah. From there, like I said, let's say you have to make that choice, and the decision is to either forgive or essentially not forgive. And let's stay on the negative side of that for a moment. So what, in your experiences, and we've probably all been there, something's happened, and you've chosen not to forgive. What are the emotions? What are the negative feelings? What have been the ramifications that you guys have experienced in your life in the past when you've chosen to just hang on to it? What do you want to share?
I'll go first. I have chosen not to forgive, because we go through this little cliche. Well, I forgive, but I won't forget. So, are you really forgiving? Because now since you don't forget it, you're reliving it all the time. You're reliving it all the time. So are you forgiving every time you let it go? Every time that you're reliving it, are you forgiving it? Right? And I'm almost can say no, because if I relive it every time, I'm going to feel that same hurt, that same anger. It may diminish a little bit over time, but sometimes when you relive that, it happened it seems like it just happened. Right. You can still feel the pain like it just happened. Over time, like I said, it decreases. But when I've chosen not to forgive, I just relive it, and that's not a peaceful place for me.
Absolutely agree with that. Tressena, what would you like to share?
I really want to touch on what Bridgit said. It's a growth process. And I don't know if this will look like unforgiveness, but in the moment, right? And this is out of an experience that I had. I had discovered again that my husband had committed adultery, and we have been through quite a bit. And the reason this is so important, because I want to show you what the growth process of getting to this place of forgiveness looks like. And then what I said a little bit earlier of being your best self. Because when I had just an encounter with the truth of what really was going on, I was so angry and emotions were just all over the place. And I threw my purse at my ex-husband, and I had a tabletop little fan on my bed nightstand, and I threw that at him. And when he left, I was no longer angry at what I had found out, actually, I was like, oh my gosh. And so this is the place where we start looking at learning how to forgive yourself, because I didn't know that was in me. But the emotions were so raw. And here we are again in the same place. And what I realized is I had no control over his decision to do what he did, but I had all the control over my actions. I did not like what I saw about myself. So I was like, oh my goodness. So that kind of started this thing in my head about, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe this is where we are. And it was hard. It was difficult. So I knew in order for me not to be in a place where this was going to overtake me, because it could have, like, I could have stayed in my feelings. I could have been mad and angry. I could have been all of those. But when I had that encounter with myself, this is now moving away from what he did, but looking at me, I was like, I just threw something to hurt someone, to injure them. So I said, the whole process of me walking out forgiveness is going to be, number one, recognizing there's some things in me that were elevated and really put on the on the stage, so to speak, that says you got some stuff you need to deal with. And so it made it easier for me to forgive him. And I've learned you have to forgive on levels. So I don't want y'all to think that it was just a complete and total forgiveness, because it wasn't at that moment. But what I learned is that I now needed to look at me and move through the process of forgiveness so that I can continue to be my best self and do what I needed to do. And then in that process, you begin to move to understanding. Like, I realized that I may not be where he was to make the decision that he made, but I injured him the same way he injured me.
Right.
And so understanding came in that, you know what, we're all flawed. We're going to all make mistakes. We're going to all do things that, you know what, we're not proud of. We're going to do things that hurts or injure someone else. And so for me, that really began the process of not only forgiving myself for what was in me that I didn't see, but then understanding, you know what, I can offer him forgiveness because I also need forgiveness for the things that I've done that I didn't like. Yeah. And so that's where I kind of bog down right now, even when you encounter things after those big major, things that may happen in your life, you're like, is it worth me holding on to it, or do I need to forgive? And I just have made a decision, and it is a calculated choice, and I'm committed to that over and over, to just forgive.
Yeah, right. I would agree. Yeah, 1,000%. So I'll share. For me, there's been situations, obviously, things happen, and you choose not to forgive. Yeah. And where it ends up, I think, having the greatest impact, and at least in some of the experiences I've had, have been wrapped around the, I guess, inability to communicate or to have that self-expression, because you're holding it so close, because there's still that emotion that's tied to it, and sometimes you don't realize it. So you become kind of guarded in some ways. You hold things, or things that you would, and sometimes would normally share, you won't share, and just different things like that. So there becomes this kind of emotional guardedness that ends up coming out of it, that can be an undercurrent that sometimes you might even realize is there until you really step back and see where the root cause of that's coming from. And then the last thing I want to transition to goes back to what Tressena was just saying about forgive yourself, right? Because that's the other piece of what we're talking about today. There are many times when other people wrong us, and that's life, and those things do happen. And again, we have no control over that. What we have control, and what Tressena just shared about how she responded, throwing things and this, that, and the other. Sometimes from a traumatic standpoint, your reaction actually scars you more than what the other person did to you, and you don't realize that. And then but you hold that and you judge yourself, and you almost like you're punishing yourself for your reaction. So when we say forgiveness, it's a 100% two-way street. You got to be able to forgive the other people in your life that may wrong you, but a lot of the times, how you respond, how you react, decisions you make, choices you make, whatever it might be, you then kind of put yourself under your own thumb, and you won't let yourself move, and
Mm.
that's a detriment to you. So being able to free yourself up, be more open, and just truly forgive yourself, I think, is a very, very important piece of moving your way through the process.
And this is a great area and to talk about, and because that we stumbled on, actually, because some people, namely me, I can think when Tressena was talking about her actions or reactions, I go right back to some things that I've done. I mean, it took me totally out of character. Out of character, I thought. And so I had to go back and say, wait a minute, oh, they made me do this, and you made me hit you, you made me throw something at you, and you made me go and slash your tires, whoever has done that. And you made me not to name any more things. And so, you go into well, you made me do that, but you have to step back and say, I have this in me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have this, I have the ability to do these things to people and their belongings. So what is that in me? And that's a component of self-awareness. What is that in me that will come out? And so definitely we have to forgive ourselves, but we have to notice those things as well.
Yep.
And so then it doesn't become about just what they did, but it's also about what in you allows you to become so angry that you do that. And so that's what we stumbled on just now is great, because I know that I'm not alone. We're not alone. That some people actually go into that mode, into that I'm gonna get you sucker mode. And so where does that come from? We have to start thinking about that. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
So I made a note to myself along this very line, and basically it's in that decision phase. And I said, is it turn the other cheek, or is it ill will? Because that's really where you get to that point of, all right, in this moment, what do I choose? Do I quote unquote turn the other cheek, or is it, all right, ill will, baby, game on, right? Because you move to that point. And as you said, this is about knowing yourself. And then again, Bridgit, great when you were saying what you learned about yourself in that moment of like, I have the capacity to do these things. Oh my God. Right?
Yeah.
So but then the follow on to that is, if you follow those actions and it happens, mentally and emotionally, where does that leave you? Right? Because it puts you in this place of almost not knowing yourself anymore, because you discovered a new layer, a new level that previously to that happening you didn't even know existed. So then it takes you to this place of, well, wait, who am I? Or what am I really capable of? Or where are my limits? Those kind of things.
And then I have one more. I have one up. Then it puts you in an insecure position, because now you've unveiled all these demons that you have in you, right? And so this person has hurt you, and then you displayed all these demonic actions. I'm gonna say it because I've done it, and then it makes you insecure.
Yeah.
Because now you've revealed all these actions that you have the capacity to do. So now you're starting to say, well, maybe I deserve to be treated like that.
Yeah.
If cheating is an action, or if being done wrong is an action, maybe I deserve that, because now I'm insecure. So now I'm in my insecure pity party. So now I'm thinking, well, if I can have the ability to do that to myself, maybe that's what I'm worth. Maybe that maybe I don't deserve to be treated well. I mean, insecurity can pop up, and it can overtake the whole situation. Now it's not about what they did to you. Now it's about maybe you deserved it, and look at what you did.
Agreed. And that's the thing, and we don't realize. And this goes back to my opening when I opened up, and I was basically saying, have you felt like you've been stuck? You can't seem to move forward. Things just seem to go in this repetitive circle. And the reason that's behind that is, if you can lose yourself and not realize you've lost yourself because of things that have happened that other people have done, but then you have the reaction piece to it. And then now you're judging yourself, don't realize it. You're holding yourself back. You don't realize it. You're not going out and truly enjoying life and reaching for the happiness that you deserve, because of all these emotional ties that you have going on in that situation. So,
Absolutely.
What do you do? How do we start to get past that? So this takes us to the next two steps in the process. And the next phase of it is what I call the why. And part of forgiving has to do with understanding the person that wronged you. There's a why. Something happened in their person, their personality, in their world, in their life, right? Most people, and I say most people because there are some people who just call it, lack of a better word, just evil at the end of the day. But most people don't necessarily intentionally go about wanting to hurt other people, right? So what's their trigger? What was their reason? What's their why of those different things as far as that goes? And that's what you need to get into, is to start the process through, okay, what was going on in their life at the time? What was missing? What could have been lacking? Did I play a part in it? Right? Was there something that maybe I was doing or not doing that led to them responding in this way? Right? So that's the why piece, understanding the causes or the reasons why it may have happened in the first place. So that's the next step of being able to work your way through the forgiveness process. What do you want to add on top of that?
Oh my God, so many things. So look, we don't, like Tressena said, we can't control other people's actions, but we need to think about them in the why of them. And so there may be circumstances that we've never considered. For an example, maybe your dad was very strong-willed, did not show emotions, did not show affection. And so we tend to grow up as teenagers and then young adults, as women as well, especially, is, well, I never had that affection. And then we start to blame him. But maybe he was raised by a father who yelled, who ignored him, who was not affectionate, who was not understanding. And maybe that was the only parenting model that he had. So, perhaps he probably really wanted to be better, but he didn't know how. And I always say hurt people hurt people. That is very, very, very true. But we don't think about that when we're hurt, because we're not, at that time, we're not sitting around saying, so what's going on with him? So what's going on with her? We're right into a victimized state, right? So maybe we need to take those things into consideration. What are they going through? What did they experience as a child that makes them so unforgiving, or so evil, or so unattached? And so you're right, Bryan. We have to understand that about other people, or attempt to understand that about other people.
Yeah. Tressena, what would you like to share?
Understanding is the second thing I put on my list of notes. And part of knowing me and myself and the growth process is I've been married twice and I'm divorced twice. And so I had to figure out, okay, what's going on here? Because to me, that's a pattern. And when I realized that I married the same exact men, they just looked different and did things a little different. But I said, there's a pattern here. And both of them resembled my father, hard workers, really good men, but there were some missing components and aspects. So if I grew up in that environment, that's what I'm used to. And a lot of tears have been shed because I'm like, well, why? Why did I choose? Why did I do this? And what I realized is you're going to have to let that go, because there were some things you had no control over at all. The parents that I got, the environment that I grew up in, and some of the choices that I made out of that place. So when I got to the to be able to understand that I can let that go, then I also realized you can let go of the things that you went through, whether it was the choice that you made or something that they did that you were affected by. And so when I got to the place of, okay, let me try to understand what this is all about, it really began to help me, because I think what understanding does is it removes you from the place where you feel like, well, somebody needs to be held accountable. Somebody needs to be blamed. No, the understanding that I found, especially in forgiving myself for repeating a pattern, is You didn't know. You cannot fault yourself for things you just did not know. And that's why I value now people in my life that have wisdom and insight, and where I sit and I glean and I listen, because if you don't know some things, you're going to find yourself repeating it again.
Again.
And so that's not where I want to be at all. And then when you look at understanding that other people have the same life experience and principle that you do, then you're like, I can't hold them accountable for what they don't know. And some people will choose to bypass the growth process and walk away. And both of my husbands, unfortunately, walked away. So looking at this from that standpoint of understanding allowed me to move to the next level in this forgiveness process, that, you know what, I understand why you did what you did. I'm not holding you accountable for the injury anymore, because now what I realize is there's something I value. I value, number one, the peace that has come, that understanding allows you now to think through the process of why things were. And then the other part is that it just brought me a sense of freedom, that I'm no longer weighed down by, well, this happened, that happened, I can't believe. And I'm like, no, let me let that go. Why? Because I value my peace. And that understanding was a huge part of it that I think really moved me through this process of forgiving myself and forgiving others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me share something here real quick. And following up with the understanding, that there's also this empathy piece of it, right? And being able to empathize. One of the mentors that I work with and kind of follow, and he shared the story of, he's having a bad day, which we all have bad days. And just so happened that as part of his bad day, he's, cruising down the freeway, and some jack, cuts him off and blah, blah, blah. Right. So in that moment, how do we react? Right. So this is how you forgive is kind of the same thing, or showing empathy is the same thing. And what he's learned is, I don't have control over what that person just did. Right. I mean, he cut me off, and that is what it is. So I can either spin myself out of control, emotional, yelling out the window, calling him every name but the Son of God, et cetera, or I can say, man, I thought I was having a bad day. Apparently, whatever's going on in his life or her life, wherever they're going, they must really be having an awful day to be in such a hurry and driving like they're driving and cutting people off. So by immediately taking that stance, you diffuse the whole situation. The emotional pieces of it, all of it, you diffuse. And because you're not trying to take something on that you actually can't control in the first place.
That's right.
So I think that's another key, is being able to empathize and say, you know what, I have an understanding now of why you could be where you are, or what could be going on. And that makes a big difference too.
And it doesn't change the circumstance. It doesn't change the circumstance of whatever happened to you.
No.
But it does allow you to see it and see the person or the situation in a different light. And then it does release that pain, so to speak, and allows you to begin to let it go.
Correct.
And like you said, with your friend, someone cutting them off, now you're not driving down the freeway mad the whole time now, because it's just changed your day. You're able, okay, well, he must really be having a bad day. So then you get some empathy in there. So now you start to feel better because your day isn't that bad.
Right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So we have
it helps you to, it helps you let go of, some of the anger.
So we have a comment from Facebook, and basically saying, that's right. Everyone has a story, right? When that's true. And we don't know what's going on in their story in that moment. Right.
Right.
So what's driving it? So
Absolutely,
you do have to stay focused to that and grow past that initial reaction when you're hurt, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a huge key. And thank you for sharing your comments on Facebook. It's very helpful. But those are the things we have to really open our eyes up to when we talk about the forgiveness process. The why phase, right? The why phase is where you, let's say, walk 10 miles in another man's shoes kind of thing. That's what you're doing, is trying to get out of your own space, your own mind, your own heart, your own emotions, and understand where that person may have been in that moment, and what some of the triggers and different things are that were happening at that point in time.
That's right.
I have really recently experienced that, with family members and then in my own personal relationship. Just trying to forgive, but from a point I was going in, and this is my own story. I was going from a standpoint of what they did and why they did it, like, to me, instead of making it about, okay, let's understand the person and where they were at that time. Now, it didn't change how I felt about what they did, but it did get enlighten me on, okay, that person must have been hurt. That person may have known what to do, and this may be their best idea, or this is the only thing they knew what to do. Now, it wasn't a good decision, but from coming from where they're from, maybe that was the only decision that they had. And so it allowed me to see them in a different light. It also, like I said, it allowed me to release that hurt, and that anger, that not the feeling, but the anger and the pain. Because I can deal with pain on a level, but the anger, it brings another side of me out, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the Facebook user commented here, it says, yeah, it starts in the mind, and how you think about, things determine how you respond and react to it. And that is
absolutely true.
Very, very, very true. One of the things that you just need to be aware of. What else on the why before we move on to the last step?
We've covered everything.
Okay.
We've covered everything.
I want to go to the last step, and this is the meaning, what I call the meaning piece of it. And here's the irony, and this is again my opinion. I get one vote. Speaking of that, be ready to vote because it's coming up, guys. So make sure you cast your votes. But I get one vote, and this is my opinion. Of the steps, I think the meaning step is actually the most important step. Now, I'll clarify why I feel that way, but then also why I feel it gets missed because we don't work our way far enough through the process on average to actually get to the meaning piece of it, right? So what does that mean when I say what is the meaning? That's that last phase of it. So the meaning phase in the forgiveness process is essentially where did you grow or what did you learn about you, about life, of your worldview, whatever else it may be, out of this entire process. You were wronged. You had to get your head around that first. Then you moved on to the next phase where it's the decision of do I forgive or not. Then you move from that phase to having some empathy to understand the why of maybe these things happen. Now it's say, okay, what did I glean from that? What did I learn? Where did I grow? And I think that's the most important part because when you can actually wrap your head around your own personal growth, knowledge, and wisdom based on those experiences, you elevate yourself. But that's my thinking on it. What do you guys think about that?
I'll say that, and I've said it so many times, we are the sum of all of our experiences. And this is I will say, okay, learning to forgive for me has definitely shaped the type of person I am in terms of engaging with other people and being compassionate and being understanding. It led me to a place where I want to mentor also because as a teen, I had a lot of unforgiveness. I didn't know how to dissect it. Okay. So it was all cut out. So I was a victim all the time. And no matter what I did, I was still the victim, no matter what part I had to play in it. And like Tressena said, that she noticed in two of her marriages that she was marrying the same person, just looked differently. Well, I was doing that, not just in personal relationships, but in situations, just going into the same situation time after time after time, and not noticing that it was the same until I had to step back and say, okay, what is your part in this? What is your part in this? Sometimes people are just mean. Sometimes people are just evil and they're doing something. But most of the time we played a part in it because we saw it coming. We saw it coming. Or we know the person has those type of characteristics because they could probably hurt you or cause some pain mentally or physically or what have you. And so I grew as a result of my experiences as a person. Inside out and mentally, I grew. I learned a lot about me. about my part in the relationships and in the situations that caused me pain. And when I had to forgive, this is a quote in a little saying I always say to people. I gave grace because I'm not all that. And I always say to people, give grace, you're not all that. And so I had to learn, and I know we haven't gotten into self-forgiveness, but I had to learn a lot about myself and what I had to forgive in me in order to see that those people that hurt me, or that situation that hurt me, I played a big part in it because of I didn't forgive myself. And some things were in me that I didn't work through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's such a true statement, right? You don't forgive yourself, right? And this is a recurring theme, and that's why when people think of forgiveness, a lot of times they're thinking outbound, right?
Mm-hmm.
I gotta forgive, I gotta forgive, I gotta forgive. Not understanding that it's actually sometimes more important that it be inbound than outbound, right?
Mm-hmm.
And getting to that point of understanding the importance of forgiving yourself so that you can move forward. This comment here by our Facebook user says, I came out of the other side better, not bitter,
Not better.
right? That's part of the process.
That's a growth process right there, because we forgive and we're still bitter. And if somebody mentioned their name, ooh, don't mention that name. I mean, so we've forgiven and moved on, but we're still bitter.
Yeah.
And so, have we really let that go? And so that's a growth process. For me, that was a monumental moment for me when I could actually talk to the people, hear the people's names, go into the same environment and situation and be unbothered. That was a growth process for me.
Yeah. That is a growth process, right? Absolutely. As you said, let it go. And the key is, as you're working your way through, especially this last piece about meaning. Meaning is, I think, as I said, for me, I think one of the most important steps, because that's what allows you to move to the next place. So I'm going to put a quote up. And for me, this quote means a lot. Forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace.
Mm-hmm.
What I just quoted earlier, yes. Yes.
So I look at that and I say, that's the meaning piece of this.
Mm-hmm.
Until you can get all the way through, I think, the meaning, the lessons learned, how this impacted you, how it made you grow, and then, Bridgit, you talked about, I didn't realize I was capable of doing those things, right? So that new learnings about yourself, all of that feeds into that. But if you don't work your way through it, then you can't get to that place of actual peace, right? And I think that's the key component for me, is to say, work your way all the way through it, including the meaning of it for you, so that you can find that place of peace. And when I first started this, I talked about, getting to the happiness you deserve in life. And if you're throwing up your own roadblocks, no one else is going to be able to solve that for you. They're not going to be able to make happiness for you
It's good.
if you're in your own way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's another key component of it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that when you get to that point where even now, when I'm in a situation where I could just go off, I'm easily swayed into this. Well, Bridget, remember, you are past that. I mean, and so I come into like, okay, well, I can stop myself. And it's been times when I could not. I felt like there was some other Bridget acting out or speaking, because I was like, dang, I didn't even know you knew that many curse words. But now I stop myself.
Yeah.
Okay, we've moved further than that in this journey that you're going on. You don't have to, and I won't do it. I won't say the things or do the things that I did in the past. So it's growth for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned. That's the meaning for me, is growth.
Yeah.
Growth.
Yeah.
So let's do final thoughts. We've kind of covered all the steps and all of the emotions that are associated with it, and the things that we think matter or important, to help people try to move through it and understand forgiveness better, and also what our personal experiences have been. So final thoughts that you might want to share.
I want to go and just briefly talk about the self-forgiveness.
Okay.
Because when we talked about the forgiveness podcast, the topic forgiveness in this podcast, the first thing I went straight to self-forgiveness. Because we have a hard time with forgiving ourselves. We will give compassion and empathy to people that we won't even give to ourselves. And I often I tell my girls and even my students, you're expecting other people to treat you better than you're treating yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So you're expecting you've done something or you've become this person that you know you're not, and you are expecting other people to forgive you, and you haven't even forgiven yourself. And so that is a really hard, for me, that was really hard, because as a single young parent, with the number of children I had, I didn't know everything. I didn't have all the answers. I made a lot of mistakes. Looking back, hindsight, I made a lot of mistakes. But just like Tressena said, I didn't know, and so I can't hold myself accountable for what I didn't know. And so that's how I know, I'm only speaking for myself. That's what I did as a young adult, and then growing into season that I am, up until I was becoming very self-aware that I was holding myself accountable for situations, for parenting skills that I did not have and that I did not know. And so now, so looking back as I think about it now, a lot of things I beat myself up for as a parent. You didn't do this and you didn't do that, and that's why they're like this. And and I don't know if anybody will agree, but sometimes as parents we'll go back and say, well, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
What did I do wrong? But and I had to go and do therapy and do these self-awareness I call them modules, because I had to really study to be self-aware that you didn't know. And so you can't hold yourself accountable for it. So you have to understand your emotions, right? And accept what you've done, accept your responsibilities, and then treat yourself with the kindness and compassion that you treat other people.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah.
Tressena, what about you?
I would definitely say my why is two things. Because I want to have peace. When you have been in chaotic situations and things have not gone well, you don't really value peace until you've not had it. And that is my why of forgiving, that forgiving them and forgiving myself. And when I say them, I just mean any situation, not out of those experiences that I've shared here, because to really be a person who embodies peace, bring that even in places where it may not be peaceful. Now, I don't carry the burden of that, but at least I know that I won't add to the negativity, the chaos, and stuff that's already gone on. And then the other part is that I'm free. I really believe when you hold unforgiveness towards yourself or people, that it weighs you down. Right. And you carry that in life. And I was a mom, I was a teacher, as a consultant in the community. I'm like, how can you bring all of those things in a place where you're weighed down? And so two of the things that I value most about forgiveness is my peace of mind. And it has freed me. It has released me to just be removed from the unforgiveness, the weight of carrying that towards yourself or towards others. So that's my why. And, the Facebook user said they are better, not bitter. I remember as I was going through the separation and divorce, that was my mantra, really. I want to be better on the other side of this, not bitter. And Bryan, when you said, if we don't get to this last piece, we don't fully go through the process, that's what the result is going to be. We're going to be bitter. We're going to hold that in, and you'll see it pop up in other places. And because I had started to recognize through my own self process of developing who am I and recognizing that, I was like, no, I don't want that to even be something I have to look back and say, do your work. You thought you were, you hadn't. And I'm like, no, do it, because you want to be better on the other side of these things and not bitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it takes work. It takes work.
It
A
takes
lot.
some work. It definitely takes some work.
Oh,
Yeah.
and
So
look, I love this. Can we
yeah,
just say this? The
you-
FaceTime user said also there is no time frame, like 2 months, 2 years,
Mhm.
and why you're not over this yet. We
Hello.
must allow ourselves the time to get through the process, and everyone's time to process is different.
That's right.
I was annoyed with people telling me to get over it. Just like I said, why
Mm.
you not over this yet? Why you haven't gotten over this yet? It took a long time, and no one outside of me could determine when I was able to forgive and let it go.
that's right.
And you don't want to hold on to it too long,
Mhm.
but we can't tell, we can't tell. I mean, no one can tell me, and I can't tell anyone else how long the process will take.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely. And there's some irony to that comment because it's perfect timing for kind of the thing I wanted to bring to the table. Um, because as I was going through, obviously, look at the steps and blah, blah, blah. Part of that process is it kind of asks you some different questions for yourself. And, you can be honest as you want or make it hypothetical. So I chose to use a real scenario as I walk through that process.
Mhm.
And the irony of it is the particular situation that I chose to tap into as I worked my way through it is something that happened more than a decade ago.
Mm.
So it's not recent at all. And
Yeah.
I know that are still some pieces of it that are still there. So I said this might
Mhm.
be a good place to start working my way through it all. And so this is perfect. She says 2 months, 2 years. How about 12 years? Right?
Yeah.
Something like this. And then and to truly start to ask yourself honestly, am I done with it? Have I gotten past
Mm.
it? It's been 12,
Yeah.
13, 15, whatever number of years it's been. Is there still something there? And then if so, what is it? Why is it still there? What will it take to get past it? So you really start to dive deeper into your own personal psyche, your own mental and emotional state. And again, more than a decade ago when this particular thing happened. So that's what I wanted to share and this is perfect, that there is no guidelines from a
Mhm.
timeline or when you need to have this happen. But the key component goes back to what Bridget was saying earlier, starting to understand where you are in that process.
Mhm.
And yes, it can go on a back burner, but not to a back burner where you've forgotten about it. It
Mm-hmm.
still needs to kind of be part of your thought process because you do need to work your way through it. It may
That's
take
right.
time. It may take years. It may take 10 years. It may take 20 years. Who knows? The key is not to let it hold you back, hold you down, or impact or limit you in ways that can change or impact your life where now you are your own worst enemy. Uh, the term I wrote down was self-sabotage,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
because now you're letting something that happened, whether it's 2 days, 2 months, 10 years, 20 years ago, sabotage where you are today and what the potential is for your future. And let's not let that be where you are, because you can't forgive, truly let it go, and take the lessons that you've learned and move forward on that. So that's the last piece I wanted to share.
And if you are a person that, and there's something, it's a lesson in everything. And if you do hold on to it, and if you are the type of person that will hold on to it and not work through it, then you need to kind of dig deeper into why are you
Mhm.
the kind of person
That's right.
that holds on to something so long, or
Mhm.
won't let a situation go, or won't forgive. You need to dig, it goes deeper, that you are that type of person that will do that. And why are you the type of person that would hold on?
100%. 100%. Well, this was great. I think we imparted a lot of great knowledge and some wisdom and some of our personal experiences to the audience. And I think there's a lot that they can take away from it. And again, the key components, I think, are understanding that there is a process. It's there to
Mhm.
support you, uh, and to be honest, truly honest with yourself
Mhm.
as you work your way through it. Because there's the emotional piece of it, which is that's the instant piece. That's the instant reaction. That's where you always come from. Then there is obviously going to be where the logic starts to kick in, and the rationality starts to kick
Mhm.
in, right? And that's typically when you start to put it back on you, because your brain starts churning, right? And you
Mhm.
start saying, well, why me, and why is,
Mhm.
all these different things start to process through, and then, but you've got to be able to move yourself past that. And as we talked about over and over, self-forgiveness is part of that process too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And not to be victimized. We can hold on to that victim. We can hold on to being a victim forever, and we can never start to forgive when we hold on to the why me
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah. Why me? Woe is me.
Yeah.
All of those pieces.
Why is this always happening to me? Why they're always doing this? Why am I picking men or women that always do this? And why do I always give myself? Why do I always let myself get hurt? And why do I always give? And everybody never gives back. Then you need to start digging into yourself and
Mhm.
kind of, why do you pick those people? Why do you put yourself in that circle? And why do you give when you know they're not going to give back? And the why in you, and not
Correct.
the woes me.
Correct. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Ladies, this was amazing. Tressena, thank you for joining us. I know it was short notice for you, but thank you for participating. And
Yes.
You're welcome.
as always, this was great. And to our audience out there, thank you so much for joining. We look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. It's going to be a couple of weeks out. Until then, take care of each other, and we will absolutely see everybody soon. Bye now.
Bye.